Hey everyone! One of the most common questions I get asked is how I render fur. Now my style is not very hyper-realistic, it's more stylized, but I figured I'd show you how I do it. The example I'm going to show you is in Procreate, which is a drawing program for the iPad Pro, but I use the same method for when I do watercolor and color pencil, so you can really kind of translate it to any medium of your choice. I'm going to show you. First, I start off by collecting my reference images. This gives me an idea of the direction that the fur will lie. Here I'm using some line art for some stickers that I did a little bit ago. I start off with a base color, which a lot of people call a flat color. This doesn't have any shading. In watercolor, this is what I would call a wash, and it kind of serves as a neutral tone for the rest of the piece. The same kind of thinking applies when you're using toned paper with color pencil. Now don't worry, I'm not going to paint every individual hair. I'm actually going to paint where the hair isn't. For medium to long-coated animals, such as wolves, bears, and bison, there's a lot of gaps between the fur. You can see that there are clumps of fur, and there's shadow where the fur is the deepest. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start off by mapping out where the fur is the deepest, such as the neck fur. So you can see I'm not actually drawing individual strands. I'm drawing the space between the fur where it splits apart. I always like to start with the neck or the longest fur. That kind of gives me an idea of where it's going to be the deepest and hence the darkest. When you move to the front of the neck, the fur is not so deep because wolves have kind of like a mane, so you're going to be longer on the back side and the sides than you are on the front. Once you have your deepest parts mapped out, then you can start adding the highlights. So remember, your base color is going to be your neutral ground. That's going to be where the fur is not as close to the viewer, but it's not as deep. The deepest part is where you have it as the darkest, whereas the closer to the viewer, it's going to be a little bit lighter. It takes a little getting used to think in opposite terms, especially if you're used to adding every little fur detail. But I'm really lazy and I don't want to deal with that. So this is my workaround. Think about it as walking through the woods. As you look through the forest, things get darker, a little bit more ominous. That's your darkest point of fur. Those are trees merging together. Whereas you walk out, things get lighter. Here I can also draw the wolf's cape. And lightly define the direction that the fur will lie. And you see me adding individual hairs, but I'm not actually adding that much. Here, I'll turn off the base layer and you can see what I'm actually adding to the details. It's not a lot. I use this method for everything that I do, whether it's digital or traditional media. I primarily work in watercolor and color pencil. So here are some examples of me using this methodology. You might be able to tell, but the watercolor wash acts as my neutral or flat colors. I realize this might be a little bit confusing. I'm kind of new to teaching people my process, so if you have any questions at all, please leave them in the comments. And make sure to subscribe to my Patreon at patreon.com/thornwolf. If you found this tutorial useful, I would love to see what you create with it. Feel free to ping me on Twitter @ThornwolfArt or on Instagram @ThornwolfArt. Just again want to reiterate that this is my style. There are a lot of different ways to draw fur. Other artists do it differently. Some are way more detailed, some are way more stylized. I just wanted to show you what works for me. But that said, if there's anything else you want to see, let me know. Thanks everyone.